today our podcast has a guest. It's our dear friend Hamid Pezешкиан from Germany. Hi, Hamid.
Добрый день, Оксана.
Добрый день, добрый день. How are you?
In general, very fine, especially when I see you and remember the old times. But of course, the recent political developments are very, very bad and so on. But when I see you and I think of the time I could spend in Russia, this brings a lot of optimistic and hope back again.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about those times when we had a lot of pioneers in Russia. And in general, we'll talk about this movement of pioneering, about its importance. And also, I have a lot of questions to ask Hamid about how he decided to come to Russia and about his years in this country. So let's start about how it all started. About the beginning, like how you were a young person, right, when you came to Russia?
You mean younger? Yeah.
Ah, sorry, you were younger, a little bit younger.
Well, I came to Russia when I was 28 years old, 20 years old. With the background, to summarize up, is on one hand relatively easy. I was born and raised in a Baha'i family. So pioneering was always a subject, always a subject. And but of course, sometimes God also plays a role in this whole thing then, man plans, but God plans better. So, and in the 1980s, we have to go back to 1980s, it was still so that the House of Justice gave goal countries to specific countries. For example, for Germany, it was clear we have to go to Eastern Europe or to Greece. Greece was another one, but everything was Eastern Europe, and it was behind the so-called Iron Curtain, so it was no access, but nice places like Trinidad and Tobago and this and that was for a German Baha'i never an option. After we came to Russia, 2 years later, the House of Justice opened in 93, the whole world, and say everybody can go to any place, but that's another story. So my destiny was then this. And then it happened that I became a member in Germany. Germany was responsible, so to say, to bring the Baha'i faith to Soviet Union, to Mongolia, and all this, and no internet, no information. So but that's another story. If you have a lot of time, we can discuss this another time. Anyhow, I became a member of this national committee, like teaching committee for Soviet Union. And of course, as a young man, 24, 25, you sit there and think, God, how do we get there? Anyhow, and then things, as you know, developed. The great plan of God also played a role. And then when the Soviet Union, it was easier to travel there. Then I went to my boss. I was working in a hospital as medical doctor and said, excuse me, I would like to go for 6 months to take unpaid leave to go to Russia. He said, okay, all the colleagues usually go west to America as a doctor. You want to go to the east? Okay. Anyhow, so I said, okay, you go. So then but then was the question, how do I enter the Soviet Union? No visa, cities were closed, and so what did I do? Somehow from this committee, we had there is a list of universities in the Soviet Union. So I went medical universities. I took about 50, 60 of them. I just sent them a letter by post, of course, no email. I said, dear this professor, I'm this and that, and I would like to come to your city and to give some lectures about psychotherapy, psychiatry, and this and that. If you want, I don't need money, just accommodation and food. And if you want me to come, send me a visa invitation. Okay. About 10 cities answered. I took all these invitations, sent them to the Soviet embassy, and then I got a visa. And so it started. So that was the first thing. It was just 1 week after the putsch in Moscow, 1991. So I then went for 5 months, like a tour through every week another city, Monday to Sunday. And then, so we went there in the daytime, seminars at the universities, in the evening, then meeting the Baha'i community. So that was really a wonderful thing. Then I came back, finished some things for half a year, and then I went, and then it became 7-8 years then. Yeah, and so that was so. Yeah, so that was how it started then, and somehow I got along with the Russians very well. They got along with me, and so a story of 8 years developed then.
Yeah, and well, how did you come later?
Well, later, again, you know, the plan of God, you know, God tests you always. It's not as easy as we think. So then I said in 92, okay, now I'm going there. And then, so I thought very, sorry, it's not very historically, but it's more systematically. I was thinking which city of Russia gives me the best opportunity to travel. So it only was the question of airports. Moscow was a little bit too crowded. So it was Yekaterinburg, yeah, or Novosibirsk. Novosibirsk was a little bit cold, but nevertheless, these two cities. Then I went to the university in Yekaterinburg, and they gave me like a position there. They said, you can come here and teach at the university. I said, okay, that's very good. So I had everything fixed, the invitation for Yekaterinburg, and then two things happened. One is I got in Germany a job at a university which I had looking for 5 years. It was the way to become professor at the university, and at that time we had 10,000 unemployed doctors in Germany. It was very difficult to find the job. So the best place, the dream position I got. And I went to this professor and said, I'm very sorry, I have to go to Russia. This is the thing. He said, okay, if I would be also in your case, I would also do that. That's unique. But anyhow, so that was the first test. And the second test was 2 days before I was leaving, then a fax came from Yekaterinburg, sorry, no position for you. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So I said, okay, God, welcome in the testing. So let's go. Then I went there, and then I went to Yelena Gruskova, had a small apartment in Yekaterinburg, Ulica Kache, I think then, yeah, you know, 12, 15, something like that. So I went there, and from there I started then. Yeah, I really started then, really. And my main thing was with through this university context, because that also shows how you can combine that with your profession. Psychotherapy was just opening. There was a great interest in Russia at that time. So I wrote to them, and by this I could come to all the cities which were all closed, you know, yeah, all Siberian cities, everything was closed. I went there, and the evenings meeting with the Baha'i. So that was then my program for a few years. Later, when I got then married, then I moved to Moscow then, because that was another thing then.
Yeah. And maybe could you share a little bit about your impressions of your first visit when you just came for those few months?
The first visits, it was like in a zoo. I was looking at the Russians, and they were looking at me. It was very interesting, you know, because I was one of the first foreigners they met. Yeah. It was very interesting. Some of them said, for example, we have never seen a man who is not drinking. Yeah. And then also when my father came, we made some lecture trip. They said, we have never seen men who are really men, but they don't drink alcohol. It was a new experience for them. So they were looking at us, and I was looking at them. So that was a very interesting. But it of course was another time. People had time. You know, it was just time. It was this Wild West time in Russia. So it was time. It was like a big adventure for everybody. The cost was relatively low still. It changed then after a few years, and the interest for spiritual things, psychotherapy, and so was enormous. So if we Baha'i at that time would have done more, there would have been hundreds of thousands of Baha'is. And now we see that, and now it's no way to get to that at that moment. And yeah, it was such a opportunity. So that was how it started. One small problem was the language, because I did not speak one word of Russian. Yeah, but you know, coming from a family where the self-confidence is quite high, I just went there and said, okay, let's see if they speak my 4 languages, but nobody spoke my languages. So, but then I always had a translator then in the seminars. So from them, then I was listening, and then I listened to that, and learned this, so it worked, but not to give up the idea because of a translation thing. Then this was not the idea then. Yeah.
And in those times when the first time that you came, and then when you stayed in Yekaterinburg, what were the topics of the conversation with the Russians? Like, how would you tell them about the faith? Was it easy or was it difficult? And how would you usually go about it?
Well, the first few years was very easy because, and again, I was very privileged then as a psychotherapist, and then there were. And then there was this thing, the Kashpirovsky and Chumak, there are making some things in the stadium. So people were very excited about psychotherapy, thought I'm like a magician or God knows what. And so I had in my program already before I came to Russia, I had some psychotherapy thing, but one topic was religion and psychotherapy. Religia y psicoterapia. So, and then it's really fun. Then in the first years, the people had all the questions from the book, some answered questions from Abdul Baha. So every night I came back to the hotel, I was reading this some answered question. On the next day, you would bring that then. So the question were reincarnation, soul of man, I don't know, destiny, fate, nature of man. So I was sometimes thinking Abdul Baha has written this book for that time in Russia. It was unbelievable that, yeah. So that was really very exciting, but it was only 2, 3, 4 years. And then it changed, materialism came and spirituality went down, and the spiritual vacuum, the spiritual vacuum was filled then with material things, what we see now, yeah.
And then your time in Moscow. So you lived in Yekaterinburg and then in Moscow. Did you live in any other places in Russia?
No, but I traveled to about 35 oblasts. Yeah. So from Moscow up to Sakhalin, Yakutsk, and God knows where then. Yeah. And so then, but no, I lived only in Moscow and in Yekaterinburg then, yeah. And in, when I got married in 1994, yeah, okay then. Well, at that time, the inflation went up, and so things became more expensive. Yeah, before that, you could live with $100 per month, but then it was not possible anymore. The apartment in Moscow itself was $500 or so. Then we came to Moscow, and then was the idea what to do. That was the time when the first medical centers opened, yeah, the Western medical centers, European Medical Center, American Medical Center, and whatever. So I wrote them, and then more or less, and then it took, but then I got the job, because at that time I was for many years the only Western trained psychiatrist in whole Russia. So on 8,000 kilometers, nobody else. So, wow. So that was quite good. And I made with them a deal. I worked them, I think 3 days, 10 hours per day. And the other 4 days I could travel then. So that was very good then, yeah. So 3 days, it's like Robin Hood, 3 days you got the money, in 4 days you could travel to the cities. And from Moscow it was very easy to travel, to any place then, yeah. So that was how it went on then at the beginning then, yeah. And then of course then the children came. Then of course then you have to change some of the plans. Then came the membership of the National Assembly, which I never expected. I thought I'm pioneering, I'm free, and then suddenly you got into this whole administration, which was on the other hand very important and challenging time. You have to build up everything. But that was mainly the thing then, yeah. Yeah, but what I would like to say is that really it shows that, of course, you need a dedication to go pioneering, but also if you can also use your professional skills so that you not only become a full-time Baha'i, but because that was for many people the question: are you a missionary or is someone paying you? I said, no, I'm working here. I'm working in the hospital. I'm doing that. So this, I think was also not unimportant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And, even if we think about it's either short-term pioneering or long-term pioneering, because pioneering is still one of the most important lines of actions in the 9-year plan that is approaching. And maybe if you could share a few thoughts about the importance of pioneering. There will be difficulties, there will be blessings, but in general, like, what do you think about this, pioneering?
Well, based on the writings and also their own experience, I think every Baha'i should at least once in his life go pioneering. Yeah, let it be, even if it's only a year. But I think if you don't, if you miss that, you have really missed something. Maybe it's a bad comparison, but it's like if you don't have children. Of course, you can survive without children, but if you have a life with children, of course it's more stress and this and that. But of course, the thing you get back, the feeling of purpose in life is totally different. You can live without that, but so I would say it is something like that. So I think without going pioneering, and of course many pioneers cannot stay 20, 30, 40 years somewhere, but I think that for a certain time you say, I put the Baha'i faith at the first place then, yeah? And this is something which is really the best time in life. And the other thing with this idea what we often have, well, it's only test and this. I mean, if you stay at home, it's also not easy. I mean, look at that now. Now really look at this world we have then, yeah. I mean, you can die at any moment, not only because of the political things, but in general. So this whole idea that if I stay home, it's safe. If I go pioneering, I die. I think it is really not like that then, yeah. I think it's just setting their priority, and it helps you really to deepen, to understand why are you here, and you see the Baha'i faith in action. This is the special thing then, and you feel this the support of the concourse on high, and you feel that because this is then. But of course, compared to the pioneering, like in the 1950s, the people went, for the 10-year plan to Africa also. I mean, this was totally different. Yeah, now we are in civilized countries, we do that. But I think every Baha'i should go pioneering and let it start with 1 year, but that for 1 year, he really makes this as a priority. You will never regret that, but you might regret that, or you will regret if you don't do that.
That's a very important thought. It's because if we look in the history of the Baha'i faith, we see, or even in every religion, we see that the message is spread by the efforts of those people who forsake, their good, and they just devote their time for the good of others. And
Oksana, if you allow, just one point is that. For example, I mean, I can only speak about myself, but I told you I had the plan to go to the university and do this and that in Germany, and it did work out. So, okay, so I go to Russia, do these things then I get into contact then, because I was the only foreign Western psychotherapist in the country. Conferences came up, I went from conference to conference, get to know the people. I got into contact with the glavny psychotherapist Rossijskiej Federacji. It was Professor Karl Wasowski in St. Petersburg. I wrote my doctoral dissertation. I mean, I had the first one, this like the Kandidatmedizinske Nauk, Kandidatske I had in Germany, but then I wrote, because the German-Russian system is identical. So then he offered me to write the thing, like a doctorski dissertation there, and to a great surprise, it was also accepted in Germany then later on. Then, yeah. So this means there is a plan in your life. God has a plan. So when you do that, there are different ways and solutions. So I think sometimes we think too linear, that only this is the only way. Mm-hmm. And pioneering is not like, do you throw everything away? No, you just make a determination, like parents say, okay, now the child is priority. Of course, you still go to work, you still clean your house, but the child has priority. That's the same thing with the pioneering then, yeah. And I think you make also, we learn to work on our own prejudices, on our own shortcomings. You meet people from another culture, if it's from another, or even from another city. You have to adjust you become more flexible. I think that's a benefit you get out of that, besides teaching and this and that.
Yeah, and besides, we also know that tests and difficulties, they are important for our personal growth. But I just wanted to also to talk about to you as a Baha'i and a psychotherapist. Maybe you can share something. We are used to comfort, and we tend to go to situations where we will feel comfortable, and getting out of our comfort zone is the most hard thing, in our material life. And you have also shared that, about the blessings. But then if somebody wants to prepare themselves for the pioneering, from both spiritual and material, like how do you set your mind frame to be willing to take tests and to be willing to go for it? Because most friends are stopped at a certain point when they feel difficulties, or there are uncertainties. When you go pioneering, there are uncertainties, and uncertainties are hard for human beings.
Yeah. I would not emphasize so much this testing and so, because people always say, oh God, I stay at home, I'm safe, I go pioneering, I'm tested by God. I think sometimes it is even the opposite. Yeah, you know this from the Barber. He says that if God wants to test someone, he sends him all the material benefits of the world so that he forgets God. Yeah, so I would be careful with that this thing there. No, of course. I mean, for some people it's easier to go pioneering, some people it's more difficult. It depends on your personality also. So if you are, for example, a person, I mean, easier it's for someone who is a little bit open emotionally, sociable, gets into contact with people, is not afraid of people. Of course, if you are more social phobia or so, then of course it's more difficult for you. I think personally one should start with some Baha'i books as a good deepening on that. One, I don't know if it exists in Russian, the book yet. If not, maybe you should really translate that. It's the Manual for Pioneers from Ruhi Khanova. Do you have this in Russian?
Unfortunately, not yet, but I think it's time to.
Yeah, and it's in a very simple English language. So I think one could really translate this now with the technical thing, maybe even by Google very quickly. So this, I think, because she has very practical ideas. For example, she says, if you are someone who likes a hot place, don't go to a cold place. I mean, it's very logical. If I go to Siberia and the whole time I'm thinking about the weather, listen, I'm someone where the weather has not much influence, because I'm so busy with my life. I've never time to think about the weather. I do my things, if it's minus or plus, or yeah. But there are some people where the sun plays a role, and the rain and the snow and this. So go to somewhere where you like. I think this is also something which is not bad. Or if you're English, okay, if you're Russian speaking, then go to a Russian speaking country. It's easier than if you go somewhere where it's only French speaking. So I think there are some practical things. Then, of course, my favorite thing, of course, is Nabil's narrative, the book Dawnbreakers. I mean, this is a pioneering book. Yeah, I mean, if you really look that, and so we put this in a framework, and then you become a part of this movement. I'm not just Hamid now for, God knows, hopefully 80 years will survive on this earth, but you are a part of an international movement. Yeah, I think, and this makes, there were people before you and there will be people after you who will do something. So I think this, so you have to make really a spiritual preparation. And then nowadays with the internet, it is so easy. You find some information where you can go, people can find even work, the other things. So it's, I think, totally different than people went 50, 70 years ago then, yeah. So I think now it's with the pioneering, with the safety net, so to say then, yeah. And you always can have a plan B. I always had my passport, of course. In Russia, you need always a passport. And I had my plane ticket back to Germany. But with this, it was easy. So, so you just go and then you see what will happen then, yeah. Yeah, so really, I think, so I think this is the important preparation. And you should, of course, consult with the institutions and to see really if you are someone who can deal with other people, and this, if you are really not very flexible, and so maybe it's then better, frankly speaking, not to go then, yeah, because then you create a lot of problems, which you also knew for some people. You go to a new country and you expect that they all run behind you then. No, you must be quite independent and just go and do your thing then, yeah.
Yeah, I think it applies to our days as well. Even if you go pioneering from one part of the city to another part city, it has the same effects. You have to feel,
it's
you
the
know,
same
think
thing then.
about the same things.
You go from Moscow to Kazan, you know, and there's totally different. I mean, movement is movement, and one has to see how, and maybe try first step, try to see that if it's very difficult for you, or maybe you go with another person together. This might be also very helpful then, and so on then, yeah. But not to make too complicated here. At the end of the day, it's if you want, an emotional decision. It is not a rational. Rational wise, nobody will leave his city or his country. No, really not then, yeah. And you know, in the 1970s and so, especially 1970s, you know, we were lucky we had all this hand of the cause of God. So they were coming to teaching conferences. So I grew up on teaching conferences. So they came there, they give a talk, always about pioneering, and it was also a 9-year plan, very interesting, you know, from 1964 to 73 was all 9 years. And then they said, okay, now we spoke, now, who of you here in the audience is going pioneering? I'm waiting here. I'm not going before you don't come up on the stage. And then they were waiting, and they're waiting. One person gets up. So, okay, wonderful, next person. And they would stand there. Sometimes they would go down the stage and pick up people. Why are you not going there? So you were sitting there, you know, like when the school teacher asks you, who can answer the question, and you look somewhere that he hopefully doesn't see you. Because they were right. They said, when you go home and think about that, you will not do that. You go, oh God, so many things then. So people got up on the stage, wrote down their name, then they went home, and then they said, oh God, what did I do? But it was too late. Yeah. So it's at the end, it's a emotional, a love story, a spiritual decision then, yeah. Like many things, you know, if you rationally want to get married, you will never get married then. Yeah? I mean, you have to plan, but at the end you have to, I mean, it's like life also then, yeah.
I think it's a very important point, and you know, it's a very good tip, because I also remember those conferences. I remember we went to the Baha'i Academy in India, and then we traveled to different parts of the Soviet Union and former Soviet Union, and then the counselors would do the same. You know, they would create this spirit. People would be
Mr.
on fire.
Or other people, they would, you know, you pull at the ear, and so then, yeah. So that's at the end of the day. And again, like many things in life, do it for 1 year. This year of service, also as an adult, do it 1 year. If it's not good, go back home. If it's good, continue. But at least you have tried. It's like everything in life. You know, you said, maybe I should plan a new job. Maybe I should do that. And then you hesitate, and then until someone else decides for you then, yeah? So if you want, do it for 1 year and then come back and say, okay, it was not a good decision then, yeah? Maybe you say it was a wonderful decision. So I think that's a bit, it's difficult to decide today for the next 50 years. This is very difficult, especially nowadays. But for 1 year, 1 year, yeah, you go there, and then you try, and then you can keep your apartment at home, your things, don't, yeah, really say, I try for 1 year, and then I see, but not 1 day. I mean, it should be really 1 year. I mean, less than 1 year, I think it's difficult to really do something, and then you see.
Yeah, it's difficult to make a decision. And, you know, I just want to ask you this question. Is there anything that you miss from Russia, from those days?
A lot. And I needed, I don't know, I think 5 years to adjust to the life in Germany again then. And even up to today, now it's 23 years I left Russia. Thing, of course, you know, it was a very, in many aspects, of course, a very special time. One was, of course, I mean, the peoples in Russia or of Russia, of course, very, very special people in general, you know, this multicultural, people from different cultures. They are, when you get to know them, very friendly. They are open to things, family-oriented. They're Russian humor, and many of these things. You know, nowadays when we speak about countries, we always think about the politicians. Putin here, Germany, that. You know, people think in that category, but we don't think of the category of human beings. Then, and this category is interesting. The other one is whatever. And then, and of course, also then in the early 90s, there was a special atmosphere. You know, first was this Aufbruch, this movement thing in whole Europe, because this East and West changed. And then, of course, in Russia was totally new situation. And we were a lot of young, we were, I think at the peak, we were 100 foreign pioneers in Russia. The
Wow.
top was 100, yeah. I think now are maybe 1 or 2, huh? I don't know, so 100. So it was, of course, some kind of also a spiritual adventure. Then all together, then we met, like you, all the young Russians, usually from the Pedagogical Institute, yeah. So this was also something like really some, really like an adventure, I would say, not fun, but it was like a really spiritual adventure, but also people meeting each other, where they have been. So this, of course, and I mean, I'm still in contact with a lot of my also Russian colleagues and friends, but of course it's different than when you live in the country. So I can really, again, I can really, just to share with everybody, at least 1 year in your life, go pioneering, yeah, and then see really with your own eyes how it is then, with your own eyes then, yeah. That's what Paola said, huh? See with your own eyes then, yeah. The independent investigation of the truth, yeah. Because someone might tell you, oh, it's so difficult, and then you go and see it's wonderful. Yeah. Yes, and I think, if I may say that the peoples of Russia can and will truly contribute a lot to the world civilization. And at this moment, of course, it looks different, but again, we should put politics aside. But on the long term, that's what I said, you know, there's many characteristics there, which I think, you know, are very important for the future society then, yeah. You know, really this being, by the end, very spiritual people then, very spiritual people who like to help other people, really this family-oriented things, but this also being open for different cultures, because you are, I think, from 110 cultures you have in your country. So this is like a Baha'i thing then, yeah. And we all know this quotation that Russia will be a delectable paradise. Yeah, we are waiting for that. But so I think really there's and this also helps us not to focus always on these political things, because this influences us much too much. Yeah, you know, we look here every day in the phone here, and then we get crazy about that. Of course, they exist, but the long term, yeah, the path, and that's what I think, especially like, again, the book Nabil Narratives helps us to put this into an order. You see, when I always, there's a big problem, I think back to the Iranian Baha'is. As you know, maybe the first meetings they had often in the oven, you know, like in a bakery shop, you know, have these big ovens, yeah, no, and wow. So they were meeting in the night in the oven and put the candle on so that people outside would not see the light. Of course, you know, when you have in a house the light, people would go to the police and they would catch you. So they went in the oven. So I'm thinking about these oven meetings, you know, they sit there together with a small candle, they read one of these writings, and then they get excited then, yeah. So I was thinking about these oven meetings then, and I think that helps us to put this into perspective maybe, and not to miss
thank you so much for sharing. This is really important, because you know, we know that, and we know what the major plan of God is, and we know that the times might get tougher, you know, and irrespective of that, we still have this responsibility to bring the message of Baha'u'llah to the people of our country and to the people of the world. And you know, this passion that you shared your experience with, and the words that you said, I hope that they will encourage everyone, at least to start thinking about the possibilities that we have around us. Because even if it's hard for us to go to another city, for example, let's take Moscow. Moscow is a huge city. It's 16 million people. And the Baha'i community is not that big, but still, you know, we can disperse and we can go to different neighborhoods, or take Kazan or any other place here in Russia. You know, we still can do something. The main point is to keep thinking about it, you know, keep praying about it.
See, Peter Khan, one of the former members of the House of Justice, always said, you can even be a pioneer in New York. You see, so because an active Baha'i can be active anywhere. if you are passive, you can be in Haifa and you are passive. But if you're active, you can really do some things then, yeah. And why not to go out a little bit to a maybe, I don't know when I say countryside, but maybe as not maybe in I don't know, Tverskaya Ploshit, but you go a little bit outside somewhere, and then you start with that, then really. And I think I never understood that, but the older I get, the more I understand. The main thing is really working with the children and the youth, so that they hopefully will be more peace-bringing and peaceful people then, yeah. Because at the end, it's human beings who change the world, yeah. It is human beings then, and one good person can do wonderful things, and one bad person can also do a lot of horrible things then, yeah. So at least we have to change people, which either you get children, 10 of them, so that you educate them hopefully good, or if not, you become engaged into that. Then I think this is something where we can really do great things then, yeah. It takes some time, but it's okay. It's okay. No, I think really and that's a good thing we have. And often when you have something, you don't value this so much. And it's really, we have in the Baha'i history, not only the writings, but we have the history of really so many generations who went pioneering. For example, there's this book about the hands of the cause of God, is in English, The Lights of Fortitude, which for sure it's like in German, not translated into English or German or Russian, but very important. You have 50 biographies of 50 hands of the gods in one book. When you read this book, you want to go out today. Yeah, you read from Mr. Banani. He was 68 years old in Iran. He was retired. He went then to Africa in the 1950s. He became the father of Africa with 68. Yeah, Mr. Dunn from America went to Australia. The same story, he becomes the father of Australia. I think he was 69 even. 69, where people said, I'm dead already. They start and open a whole continent. Yeah, and sometimes just the movement really brings something then. And I think really, Mr. Hartmut Grossman, whom you of course all know, was a former member of the House of Justice, he said that, you always cry. If you sit at home, you cry. If you're in a pioneering place, you cry. So go on at least to a pioneering place and cry there. It's not that who sits at home has the best life and the other one is only dying. It is not like that then. It is not like that then, yeah. And especially within the same country, you have no language problems. It's that then, and so on then, yeah. And if you're a kind person, people will be attracted, I think. But maybe the last thing is you should also, again, look on your personality. There are some people, who can, you go to a foreign city or foreign place, they go on the street and, they collect people and so. But not everybody can do that. If you cannot do that, then it's better, I think, to go to a place where they are already Baha'i, so where you can help, let's say, more like consolidating. I've seen some wonderful pioneers who went alone somewhere and they really, like a plant without water, they were just dying because, they were alone. You sit at home and pray. But so you need a team, some people who go out, some people who stay and consolidate. So that also, I think, you should decide where you go, depending really on your own personality.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for so many exciting tips for those who might decide and become a pioneer. Thank you so much, Hamid.
Thank you very much, Oksana. Спасибо большое и всего доброго.
Всего хорошего.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.